Hey, Husker Nation, how are we doing this afternoon? We got Coach Rhule's press conference recap for you today. Right off the rip, though, we got 18 players that are going to be out or limited in action for spring ball. At wide receiver, we're going to be missing Demetrius Bell, Carter Nelson, and Keelan Smith. Tight end, Mac Markway is going to be out. And then on the offensive line, Turner Corcoran, Gunnar Gatula, and then on the D-line, we're going to be missing Connor Keneally and incoming transfer Jalen George. At linebacker, Roger Gradney, Dawson Merritt, and Pierce Newberry are all out. And then at defensive back, Jameer Khan and Evan Taylor. Coach Rhule did say that Henry Lutovsky and Teddy Prohaska will be limited, but he did kind of put a caveat on Teddy Prohaska saying he'd be out/limited. It's just going to be kind of easing him back after coming off another season-ending injury. David Borchers and Sua Lofotu on the defensive line are both going to be limited in spring ball as well. And then kicker Tristan Alvano kind of rounds out your guys that are hurt for spring practice. Coach Rhule did talk a little bit about our new GM and kind of the things he liked about him, the kind of the things that he's going to be doing for Nebraska. The big thing Coach Rhule said about Pat was he's adaptable and versatile. And in this new college football world where we don't quite know the future, but we can kind of see it heading towards that NFL model, he liked those qualities. He said his main focuses are going to be on recruiting, retention, and finance, meaning more than likely NIL cost, how much a player is worth paying, I guess is a way to put it. He also said that he will take our evaluations to the next level. And I quote him, take evaluations to the next level. He looks at Pat as a kind of like the same as like a coordinator. Like a coordinator oversees the offense or the defense. Well, Pat's going to oversee the entire recruiting department as the general manager. He did make sure, Coach Rhule, he made sure to praise recruiting staffers Keith Williams, Troy Vincent, former GM Sean Padden, just to name a few, about their excellent job that they've done in recruiting. And, one thing, too, is that's probably Pat's biggest weakness, which we talked about in our video when we talked about the hiring. And then it was nice to see that Coach Rhule kind of followed that sentiment. Like, this is an obvious weakness of his. That's why you put an elite team, an elite staff around him so that he can be successful. Now, he did say that hiring a new GM was because former GM Sean Padden was kind of wanting to move into a different direction, more in player finance and analytics. So that is kind of how this position opened for Pat. Coach Rhule also talked about the mat drills. One reporter asked him if they were further along this year than they had been in previous years. And Rhule said certainly further along than we have been coming out of mat drills. Keep in mind, we took a lot of younger guys our first 2 years. So those guys are now bigger, they're faster, they're stronger, they're more mature. There's less distractions around the program right now, especially with the lack of access to media, which helps quite a bit with limiting distractions. And then he was asked about Coach Dana Holgorsen, kind of how he sees this offense going forward now that he's full-time the offensive coordinator. He's had time to kind of get his playbook installed, get his players to understand the playbook. And Coach Rhule said last year that the big things with the offense were consistency. They did too much. They tried to feed too many people at times. And that's one thing that I would 100% agree with, that yes, consistency was a problem, and I would 100% agree that they tried to feed too many people. You got to simplify it, and that's what Dana did day one. There's stuff in the playbook, if you recall. He was like, I don't even understand this, so how are my players going to understand this? So what did he do? He ripped it out, threw it away. He identified, okay, I've got Emmett Johnson, who's a really good playmaker. I've got Ja'Cory Barney, who's a really good playmaker, and I'm going to just get them the ball in space, whether that be on a screen, whether that be a handoff, whether that be on a reverse, whether that be however he identified the ways to get them the ball. But he said, these are my playmakers. I'm going to get them the ball and let them go make plays. Like, it's really simple. And one thing, too, Coach Rhule said they identified all the things that they're going to be good at, or what they believe they'll be good at with these players, and they're going to implement those into the offense. Players are getting more comfortable in the direction of the offense. Coach Rhule also talked about Dylan Raiola. He said he did a lot of good things as a freshman that normally freshmen don't do, especially at quarterback. There's not a great track record in college football of true freshman quarterbacks coming in and just being okay. And I thought Dylan was more than okay last season. He certainly had a 2 or 3 game skid where he really struggled, which is normal. But there were times where Dylan, you just saw the ability to read the defense and layer the ball over a linebacker and drop it in the bucket underneath the safety. And there's so many times where Dylan looked so much more, I guess you could say, polished, or he looked older than he was. There was times he looked like a freshman. So now it's about, he said sometimes when you get these freshmen, they perform really good their freshman season, and then that second year they kind of fall off a little bit, and then their junior season they pick it back up. The sophomore slump is essentially what he said. They're trying to figure out, and hopefully what they're doing is not going to allow for a sophomore slump. And that's not just from Dylan. That's from Vincent Shavers, Ja'Cory Barney, just to name a few guys. He said last year that Dylan was a quiet person, and he just tried to earn everyone's respect. Now he has to be that vocal leader. He needs to step into that role and be comfortable in that role. They're working on his body composition. He said, you won't be a great QB at 240 pounds. So Dylan's working on his body composition. He's trying to make sure that he adds or drops the right weight. I'm not sure what his weight is. If he was 240 pounds, yeah, that's probably a problem. They're working on him being more fleet of foot, sliding in the pocket, moving within the pocket. That way he can convert on third downs with his feet. And that's one thing we all agree on that Dylan needs to be more comfortable doing, is taking off and running and getting what you can. Doesn't matter if it's third down. If it's 2nd and 3 and you're calling a pass play and you see that there's 2 or 3 or 4 yards of running room, just take it and go. I mean, just keep the ball moving down the field. That's all we're asking to do. Doesn't matter how you do it. I'm of that belief. I don't care if Nebraska runs the ball 100 times a game or if they throw the ball 100 times a game. Are you moving the ball and scoring points and winning? Yes or no? I don't care how you get there. Just win. That's all we should care about. Another year in the system, too, should be huge for Dylan and all these younger guys, too. They're getting more comfortable in the system with the coaching, et cetera, et cetera. Coach Rhule did talk about Rocco Spindler, too. He said he's a big, powerful lineman that can move people. He accelerates at the line of scrimmage and knocks people off the line of scrimmage. He said he fits the culture. He's been great at adding value to the offensive line room. He is a leader in that room, despite only have been here, 2.5 months. He's jumped right into that room and fit right in. He said that Justin Evans-Jenkins is rotating at left guard and center. This is a huge spring for the young offensive linemen. Talking about people like, and if I forget somebody, I apologize, but Sam Sledge, Preston Taumua, Tyler Connects back from injury. Then we say Jason Machechek. Who else? Gibson Pyle. It's a huge. There's a lot of guys, but it's a huge spring for them because there's so many linemen that are upperclassmen that are hurt and they're not going to be participating in spring. You guys are going to get, reps with the 1s and reps with the 2s. This is a huge spring for these guys to develop. Coach Rhule did announce that the spring league that we saw last year is gone. He said they did that last year as a way to drive and create competition with a younger team. He said now this is an older team. Now it's about learning techniques, getting better, the fundamentals, etc., all the coach speak. But it's a big spring ahead. One thing he did mention, too, was as they were prepping for the bowl game, they started looking at, in terms of who to play, production over potential, which makes too much sense to me. You see it a lot with a coaching staff when they first come in. They get a bunch of younger guys and they just play them because those are their guys. Coach Rhule did the same thing, and it's not uncommon, so I'm not faulting him for it, but now that what they're looking at is, have you proved that you can play at this level? Yes, great, you're going to play. Until you can prove in practice and in the weight room, etc., that you can play at this level, you're not going to see the field. You can't waste any days, as he said. And then he also talked about Heinrich Harberg's move to tight end. He said there's no doubt that he can do it. A lot of guys would have transferred, and he's 100% right, especially at quarterback. Most quarterbacks, if you said, hey, look, you're going into your final season and, you're just not in the plans for us at quarterback, we think you'd be a great tight end. We think you'd be a great wide receiver. We think you'd be a great, whatever position you think. Most of those guys, and it's not a fault of them, but most of those players would be like, yeah, I'm just going to go transfer to another school where I can play quarterback because I think I'm a quarterback. We've seen that happen, even at Nebraska. Luke McCaffrey. Scott Frost tried to move him to receiver. His family didn't want him, so he transferred to Louisville. Louisville tried to move him to receiver after like 3 days, and he was like, nope, I'm out. I'm going to Rice. And then Rice was like, yeah, you're not a quarterback. You're a receiver. And it's like, man, if you just would have stuck with either Nebraska or Louisville, you would have been playing receiver anyways. And now, he is a good receiver, don't get me wrong. But we've seen it happen at Nebraska where quarterback thinks they're a quarterback and they're just not. And that's okay. But I digress. That happens from time to time. So back to Harberg. He said that they didn't plan to play Harberg as much as they actually did in the bowl game. But when they were kind of looking at the film of Boston College's defense and they realized if we play Harberg, it's really going to change a lot of what Boston College wants to do on defense. So they put him in the game plan more. And yeah, we saw it quite a bit. He played pretty well. He's a great athlete. There's no doubt about it. He's learning the physicality of the position, but he's doing a great job according to Coach Rhule. I think Harberg has a chance at the next level, and I think Coach Rhule believes that, and he even said that both he and Heinrich realize that his athletic ability will give him a shot in the NFL. And then there was another question about Coach's non-con schedule philosophy, and I'm not going to, I wrote a handful of notes on it, but I've talked about it in my video when we talked about Nebraska canceling the Tennessee series. I've said it probably a handful of times on a live show. I 100% agree with Rhule on this, and it's not going to be the popular opinion, but in my opinion, it's the right opinion. You can't have a wrong opinion, but the way I see it is he's right. The only teams that win are the teams that put the program 100% first. Winning comes first. That's what Rhule said. Hard to disagree. Well, and then he brought some data with it. He said the last 2 national title winners didn't play Power 5 opponents in their non-conference. Ohio State and Michigan. So, I think he's kind of got a point. The other point he brought up, if the system changes, we all play 9 conference games and 1 crossover, he would support it. But when you have a conference like the SEC who plays 8 conference games and then they all play a sister school of the blind in late November for no reason other than they don't want to play 9 conference games. If they do that and then they said, yeah, we're going to have a Big Ten SEC crossover or a Big Ten ACC crossover or a Big Ten Big 12 crossover, I think I would be with Rhule. I would support it 100%. But Nebraska and all Big Ten opponents already play 9 conference games. There is no reason to have 10 Power 4 opponents on your schedule. The goal is to get to the playoffs, and then you go from there. Well, if you're guaranteeing, I won't say guaranteeing, but if you're playing a Tennessee at Tennessee and winning does you no good, but losing hurts you, why? It makes no sense to me. Coach also talked about defensive line, kind of that room without Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmacher. And I agree with this statement too. I think if we go back and watch games too, he said, I'm going to quote him here, don't think any of us appreciated how good Ty was. He was like a cheat code. Ty Robinson took over games. And in the midst of a season where there was a lot of frustration, a lot of angst, it's hard to kind of see that stuff in the moment and appreciate it in the moment. It was a little different with Ndamukong Suh because we all kind of knew we were watching arguably the best defensive lineman in college football history. And I'm not saying Ty is the best in history, no way. But in that moment when you're staring down the barrel of another 5-7 season potentially, you don't really notice how great Ty was. So I won't be shocked if Ty is a 2nd-round pick, maybe 3rd-round pick. He's going to have a long, great NFL career. Coach Rhule talked about Riley Van Poppel, Elijah Judy, Cam Lenhart, Keona Davis, and some other guys. He said they're all ready. The defensive line will play at a high level next season. We will be chasing that level of play of Ty and Nash. A couple quick hitters, and then we will get you on out of here because we got to prep for our live show this evening at 6 p.m. We have a huge guest on tonight. Huge, big guest from the pipeline. He is joining us tonight at 6 p.m., so make sure you are tuning in, get your questions ready for our guest. I don't want to say his name until Justin drops the graphic later today. Quick hitter, though, on Jalen Grahamstad. Coach Rhule said that he has lots of confidence in Jalen and his ability to operate the offense. He compared Jalen and Dylan's situation to like having the older vet in the QB room that's kind of sitting behind the young gun at QB. Not saying that Jalen's like teaching Dylan or whatever, but Dylan just has only 1 year of college experience, and he's got 4 college years of experience, and he's going into year 5. Dylan's going into year 2. So I get that comparison is kind of a stretch. And then Coach Rhule also said that defensive line coach Terry Braden was offered a position coach job in the NFL, and he turned it down, and he never said anything to Coach Rhule. Coach Rhule said Braden didn't try to come to him and like use that as leverage for more money. He just simply I already accepted the Nebraska job. I'm going to Nebraska. Thanks, but no thanks to whoever that NFL team was. And he wasn't the only one either. Coach Rhule said that 2 NFL teams tried to hire strength and conditioning coordinator Corey Campbell. And 1 NFL team tried to hire Mitch Tulowinski, Nebraska's coordinator of football sports science. So I think back to this Deion Sanders quote when he was leaving Jackson State. And I know we don't like Deion Sanders, but he was right. In this business, you're either elevating or you are getting terminated or something like that. Nebraska has coaches that are elevating. That's good for the program, especially a strength and conditioning coach. I mean, that guy is around the players more than anybody. And then a little nugget here I thought that was interesting on Purdue transfer quarterback Marcus Davila, and then as well as Kentucky wide receiver transfer Hardly Gilmore Jr. Coach Rhule said he hadn't really seen much of their film. He 100% trusted the evaluation of Dana Holgorsen and Da'Keil Shorts. He said Dana Holgorsen stood up for Davila and he wanted him, and Da'Keil Shorts did the same for Hardly Gilmore. He trusted his coaches on their evaluations that they're going to make the right decision for the program. He said, you'd be a fool not to take advantage of insider knowledge. And that leads me to my next point. You would be a fool not to join our live show tonight because we have a monster guest. I know I just said that, but we've already had Bill Bush on. We've already had Tanner Turch on. We've had Tyson Terry, Caden Vermas, and tonight we've got our 5th guest interview. So make sure you are tuning in tonight at 6 p.m. I will see you there. Go Big Red.